And my special guest this evening is Dr. Richard Sauder. And Richard Sauder is a native Virginian with an abiding interest in Forteana, unusual information, and anomalous paradigm-busting data of all varieties. Beginning in early childhood, he has experienced firsthand contact with a variety of paranormal phenomena that has left him a bit puzzled, flummoxed, and thoroughly persuaded that there is much more to the Earth and to human perception and consciousness than the mainstream American culture believes. Some of Richard's favorite research and reading interests are underground and underwater bases and tunnels, electronic mind control, freedom technology, UFOs, human prehistory and remote antiquity, international politics, the Kundalini energy, and alternative thought patterns. And he has many books available on Amazon.com, Hidden in Plain Sight, Beyond the X-Files, Underwater and Underground Bases, Surprising Facts the Government Does Not Want You to Know, Underground Bases and Tunnels, What the Government is Trying to Hide. Fantastic reads, and I strongly suggest people, pick up a copy. He also has a blog that you can access at, and I put this link into the chat room, eventhorizonChronicle.blogspot.com. And it is with great honor that we welcome Dr. Sauder to the show this evening. Hello there.
Thank you, Solaris. I'm glad to be with you.
I'm glad to have you on the line with us tonight, and thank you for joining us. And so, what's been going on with you? Let's give everybody a rundown insofar as what you're up to.
Well, I am a native Virginian, but I left the United States in late 2010. I came to Ecuador, and I'm still here. I intend to remain in South America. I'm seeking political refuge in Ecuador. It's been a long road thus far. I do have some legal representation and a little bit of support from others, but it's not easy. I'm kind of in a what they call a migratory status limbo, I suppose you could say, and I'm not overly concerned about it. I will, however, do what I have to do legally to avoid returning to the United States. I firmly intend to remain in South America. The future prospects for just about anyone in the United States are not very good. That system, that whole fake red, white, and blue system, is on the verge of tremendous turmoil. And I feel like, I gave it the office at this point. I'm an anti-nuclear activist of many years standing. I was arrested and jailed many times in the United States for my nonviolent peace demonstrations atop nuclear missile silos in different states, various states. And I've been incarcerated in several different American states for my nonviolent peace demonstrations. I have spent enough time locked up in the red, white, and blue cages of the empire and do not intend to spend one more day under those circumstances. And with the new laws under Obama, who is, if it's possible, even far more tyrannical and dictatorial than the presidents before him, such as George W. Bush. Under Obama, we have terrible, vicious new laws, such as the NDAA, which authorizes him to determine anyone is effectively an enemy of the state and can be grabbed literally off the street anywhere in the world and secretly detained by the United States military indefinitely, without charge, without public trial, and you just disappear. Mm-hmm. That is something that the vicious military dictatorships in Latin America did in past decades. The United States government has brought that back. In fact, it's now...
Oops, where'd you go? Hang on, are you there? Hang on, you guys. We might have some interference problems. Richard, can you hear me? Yeah, I just lost him. Hang on, everybody. This is going to be an issue. He's outside the U.S., so we're going to have some problems. Trying to get the call back here, so just hang on. This will probably go on and off all night, so bear with us, but Richard has some interesting news and information. He's trying to type me right now. Let me try and get him back here. All right. Yeah, he's going to have some technical issues. Stand by, everybody. The audio was good. Yeah, he says he's trying to reconnect.
Hello?
Hi there.
Hello?
Yeah, hi.
Yes.
I got you. Okay.
We talked about this a little bit before we went on the air, that sometimes when sensitive topics are touched upon in my radio interviews, Skype will pull the plug.
Right.
But we're back.
Well, good.
And talking about the NDAA and how under the NDAA, President Obama, in general, the executive branch of government of the United States, says that it has the power to disappear people. Anywhere in the world, this includes American citizens, and to be detained indefinitely by the United States military without public charge, without public trial, you just disappear. And if they want to torture you or kill you or just throw you in a dungeon for the remainder of your life, no one will know. Now, this is unconstitutional, but it's the law, and we simply have no idea as to how many people maybe already have been disappeared. I couldn't tell you, and no one can, and that's what's wrong with military dictatorship. However, that is what has been set up in the United States already. That is military dictatorship right there, and it's being deepened. You know, we have the upcoming Jade Helm military exercise, which will begin in a matter of weeks from now.
I believe it's already started, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, some people say,
Yeah.
some people it begins on June 15th. And from originally the publicly given announcement was that it would begin on July 15th. But in reality, there are military exercises already underway in various locations around the United States, where the Army is being sent out among the civilian population to conduct urban warfare exercises and things of that nature. Now, you have to understand, when the military trains, military training is mission specific. So if they are conducting military training in American cities, that means they intend to fight in American cities.
Right.
That's the preparation. Now with Jade Helm, it's pretty well in the face of the American people. A lot of people get it. There are a lot of people who are still oblivious. But this is the way that military dictatorship is phased in. When the military is being sent off base among the civilian population, I mean, what do you call that? They have training grounds and training ranges on military bases all over the country. So when they're being sent off base amongst the civilian population, you see they've already crossed the line. They're out of the barracks. And a military that's out of the barracks and in the streets, well, by definition, that's military dictatorship when the military leaves the barracks and moves into the streets.
Right, absolutely. And Richard, how does this, if at all, does it tie into underground bases at all? What's going on above ground?
I think it does, in that so much of the military command, control, and communication system runs through an unknown number of underground bases. Now, we know of some of them from my work, among others, and some of the most prominent military underground bases would be, of course, the Sauder facility on the border between Maryland, the states of Maryland and Pennsylvania, and then Cheyenne Mountain, which is being reactivated as we speak. For a period of years, it had been downgraded, but it's being reactivated now and updated technologically. Okay. Others, there are others on various military bases around the country. There's a big one at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, it's very large and very deep, very sophisticated. So those are three major underground military, they're called 3C bases, CCC, command, control, and communication bases. I definitely presume there are more. Those ones are on the public record. Others exist that are secret. I know this from my own research. I have identified a fair number of underground bases in the United States, and even some of them in other countries, that I could find on the open public record when I went to do my research back in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s, when I was still in the United States. And, of course, the military has them. There are other government agencies that have them. They kind of span the gamut. The National Archives and Records Administration has underground facilities. The Department of Energy does. Of course, we already mentioned the Pentagon. The Executive Office of the President has a major, huge, multi-level underground facility beneath the White House. And underneath the Capitol building, there's a network of tunnels with trains that go out to the various House of Representatives and Senate office buildings. In fact, official Washington, D.C. is underlain by a labyrinth of different kinds of tunnels and facilities used by a variety of agencies. Another example would be the NSA, the National Security Agency, the infamous National Security Agency that is spying on everyone all the time and is certainly monitoring this broadcast. Now, they have a vast facility beneath their headquarters in Laurel, Maryland, which goes down and down and down, multi-levels. My research suggests it goes down 20 levels at least. And on each level spreads out for acres. And these multiple acre levels are filled with supercomputers that are part of the NSA's vast surveillance network. Now, the NSA also has a very large and sophisticated and deep underground facility right in the middle of Australia. It's the so-called Pine Gap facility near the very small town of Alice Springs. It literally is out in the middle of nowhere, and they like it that way because they're away from any public intrusion. In fact, my understanding is not even the Prime Minister of Australia can get into that place. It's so secured by the Americans. The NSA is there. I believe the CIA is as well. The NRO, which is the National Reconnaissance Office, and perhaps some other agencies. But it's a very highly secure facility. The NSA is perhaps the major presence there. The NSA also has a satellite downlink facility on the border, just over the border between Virginia and West Virginia. It's on the West Virginia side at Sugar Grove. It's an underground facility jointly run by the NSA and the United States Navy. There are also other facilities in Northern Virginia. For years, the CIA had a couple of underground bases near the small town of Warrenton, Virginia. Now, if you went to that place, as I did back in the 1990s, it would say the sign said Warrenton Training Station, a United States Army training station, stations A and B. They had guards in black uniforms. They weren't Army guards, but they were guards in black uniforms, and the sign said it was an Army facility. However, that was really a covert CIA facility. In recent years, the agency jurisdiction of that facility appears to have gone over to the Department of Homeland Security. But, that's a catch-all bureaucratic umbrella, and beneath the aegis of the Department of Homeland Security. There are multiple agencies carrying out all kinds of programs and projects. So who knows what really goes on underground there. I talked about that specific facility, those two facilities, both of which are underground, near Warrenton. I talked about that place with Fletcher Prudy. I don't know if you ever interviewed Fletcher.
No, I haven't.
Well, he's dead now. He died a few years back.
Okay.
But Fletcher Prudy, during the height of the Cold War, was the liaison officer between the CIA and the Pentagon. I believe primarily the CIA and the Air Force. And he actually, in talking with him, he told me that he was, I believe, the major coordinating officer, not the only person involved by far, but he played a major administrative or coordinating role in bringing over ex-CIA, ex-Nazi scientists, engineers, and technicians under the Project Paperclip program. He wasn't the only one involved, but he was evidently one of the higher level people that helped facilitate that by dint of his liaison role between the CIA and the Pentagon. He told me that facility near Warrenton, I asked him about it. I said, who runs that place? He said, well, it's a CIA facility. And I told him, but it says United States Army out front on the signs. And he said, well, that's cover. In reality, it's a CIA facility. So I asked him, what goes on there? What do they do? And he said, well, you have to understand that question has to do with the realm of special operations, and I can't talk to you about special operations. In other words, it's classified. And he had a security clearance. So, and when you're in to the level that he was, any of these people, those security clearances pretty well follow you to the grave. That's why the vast majority of them don't say diddly squat about what they do. The vast majority of people with those high-level security clearances. And the DOE, that's Q level, but I've been told there are clearances even above Q level. I was given an example of how that works by one of my sources. I was told that at the Q level, even once you're out and you're no longer working in the system, that every year they bring you in for a interview. They inject you with truth serum. They hook you up to a polygraph machine, and then they ask, now, over the past year, have you been a good boy? Have you been a good girl? Have you violated your security oath? Have you run your mouth? They know what programs you were involved in and what you did, at least in general terms, and so they ask you pointed questions. If it's rather difficult to dissemble under the influence of truth serum, so you blab. I mean, your mouth runs like a sieve. And that's how they enforce a system. I suspect that they can even get harsher than that if they think that you're hiding something, or you indeed have not been a good boy or a good girl over the time period about which they are interrogating you. So you can see it's a totalitarian system at that level. And once you're in and you sign the papers, you're in the hands of those alphabet soup agencies. And it's a harsh world, so very few people actually do talk. And even if they do talk, they tend to speak in riddles.
Right. It's true. Yeah.
And it's amazing that under those circumstances, as many people have talked to me as have, and that I've been able to find as much documentation as I've been able to find, what that tells me is that what's going on underground and also undersea is so vast, so involved, so complex, so important, and so probably unpalatable were most people to know about it, that great efforts have been exerted and are being exerted to keep all of that as far away from public notice as possible. So under those circumstances, it's actually kind of amazing that I found out as much as I have, and that as many people as have dropped tidbits to me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, it's like they have a different world going simultaneously than what's going on the ground.
It's a parallel reality. Mm-hmm. There are one or more parallel reality constructs on this planet. This so-called everyday life that we're involved in the so-called modern world is a carefully contrived fiction, speaking of the system. And the average person is fairly well oblivious, though some people are waking up, in part through reading the kinds of books that I've put out there, and but not only me. I mean, there are many people researching many different topics, and the net effect is that a certain number of people, not the majority, but an increasingly sizable minority, have begun to wake up in rather piecemeal fashion. And for me, it's been a process as well that started when I was 3 years old, when I was visited by the Bone Lady, an entity I called a Bone Lady, a powerful female entity, powerful in the sense that a deep soul, let's say, real deep. She was up on the roof of the family home, our very humble, small little family home in a clearing in the woods in Tidewater, Virginia. And that was 1958. She peered over the edge of the roof, over the eaves at me, and blew my mind wide open. It was mind-to-mind communication. Mm. Some people have asked me, well, why did she appear to you and communicate with you? And I'm thinking, because I was open to it at a soul level. A lot of people are blocked. A lot of people don't want to know. A lot of people don't want to know nothing about nothing. Mm-hmm. And so they don't. So they're really pretty ignorant about just about everything by choice, right, at a soul level. A lot of people have blocked themselves at a soul level, willfully so.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Do you think she might have been an ancestor of yours?
No, I think she was, I'd put her more in the demigoddess category.
Okay.
Or Mother Earth type of category.
Mm-hmm.
A gaunt, as I perceived her, kind of a gaunt, skeletal type of figure, but definitely very female. And I called her the Bone Lady. That was my little 3-year-old name for her. Mm. Either she told me that she was the Bone Lady, or I just looked at her and I thought, ooh, that's a Bone Lady. You know, when you're 3 years old, how many words do you know? Not nearly as your vocabulary is much smaller than your adult vocabulary, but you do have a basic working vocabulary. So anyway, she downloaded a heavy data stream to my consciousness, which had two major components. One was that bad times are coming, just a terrible, dark, grim, foreboding, oppressive time was coming. And that's a heavy thing for anyone, including a 3-year-old. I was sickly at the time. I was not well at all. It wasn't clear if I were going to live or die at that point. And shortly after a visit, I started getting better, and they decided, well, this sick little boy is going to make it. And I did, but I truly was very ill in my infancy. And then the other aspect of what she showed me was that it didn't have to be that way, that things didn't have to get so darkly grim and terrible and awful and any negative adjective you can think of. It didn't have to happen. That it was going to happen, but that it didn't have to. And the reason why is because there's also a human capacity in me and you, and presumably in a lot of people listening, and a lot of people right around the world, to be so much better than we are, to be like Jesus, really, to be Jesus-like, or like the Buddha, with a very high level of consciousness, great level of understanding, of compassion and love and empathy, and also tremendous wisdom. But the vast majority of humanity has rejected that option. I mean, the vast majority
right.
has willfully rejected that option. The vast majority, consciously or subconsciously, has embraced the first option. And so we are plunging headlong towards catastrophe. Look, on every hand you see crime, disease, suffering, exploitation, war, environmental degradation, destruction, oppression of every description all over this planet.
Right.
It's bringing the human race down hard. It's physically damaging the planet, and we're also annihilating many other species of biological life. I mean, by the thousands all over the planet. That process is already underway, and it's accelerating. And oh yeah, there might be a nuclear war if the United States keeps militarily pressing China and Russia. Mm-hmm. So and there are wars raging in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, etc., being pushed for the most part by the United States and its military allies. And so what the Bone Lady downloaded to me was absolutely true. It's all playing out just as was shown to me in 1958, that we are a planet in crisis. We are a massively dysfunctional human species in crisis. And as we speak right now, it's not getting better. It's getting worse.
Agree.
So what the Bone Lady put into my consciousness at the age of 57 years ago, what can I say? The Bone Lady knows. She's considerably wise. And she was looking down through the timeline, down through the time-space, Earth time-space corridor, straight down the tunnel, looking more than 50 years into the future. And she nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And then, as for the other part of it, yes, we do have the capacity to greatly raise our consciousness and be much better beings than most of us are. Mm-hmm. And yet most of us elect not to do that. That's the fact of the matter.
Right.
So what she revealed to me was, it doesn't have to happen, but it is going to happen, but it wouldn't have to. And you, little boy, you can be like Jesus, and you know what? A whole lot of other human beings can be like Jesus, but we're not. And oh, we're suffering because we're not.
Truly. Yeah, I agree. It's really about higher consciousness and navigating and manifesting the reality of a higher consciousness. Yeah, I totally resonate with that. And I agree with you. This is really disturbing for me to watch what's going on this planet and on this timeline. I've never seen so much dysfunctional patterning and evil. It's really strange, because I always thought we'd have a higher consciousness design. I always figured we'd have a light at the end of the tunnel.
No, there may be a rock slide at the end of the tunnel that seals the tunnel.
Right.
And one of the things that ayahuasca showed me, one of my reasons, perhaps my primary motivation for coming to South America initially, was to pursue a shamanic vision quest, which I did do, and I consider that it didn't end. In a sense, my entire life is a shamanic vision quest, and this is just another chapter in that lifetime quest. One of the first things that ayahuasca showed me, I've drunk a lot of ayahuasca and also a lot of malikawa. I wouldn't recommend to anyone that they do these unless they're ready for it. A lot of people really aren't ready for ayahuasca, and malikawa can be even much harder. For one thing, it's hard to find a really good shaman. There are some, but there are also a lot of phonies and frauds out there, so you have to be careful. Just because someone has a web page on the internet advertising themselves as a shaman, providing ayahuasca retreats and that kind of thing doesn't necessarily mean that they're ethical or that they're spiritually oriented in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of charlatans out there, but there are some good shamans, and how you find a good shaman as opposed to a bad one, that's up to you. I don't know. You do the best you can. But the thing is, ayahuasca showed me right away when I drank it the first few times that so-called natural reality has been hijacked.
Mm-hmm.
And that the reality that we are immersed in is a fraudulent, false, fake reality. It is rigged up, down, and sideways. And this planet is under its spell. The human race, or at least from my observation, the vast majority of human race are in thrall to this artificially imposed reality. Now, where did this come from? According to my perception, when I drank ayahuasca, there's a type of machine, something I've called a machine. It is an awareness. It's a vast awareness, a vast consciousness that is endlessly malevolent, conniving, relentless, and ruthless. It will not stop coming. It is bent on subjugation, domination, and even destruction of the natural order. It does not mean well. And it has got its tentacles into the human race up, down, and sideways. Physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, and spiritually.
I agree with you on that. Where do you think it came from?
It is. Well, see, that's the question. Because of my current situation, I'm not able to journey with ayahuasca right now, but those will be some questions that I'll have in the future if I'm able to drink more ayahuasca, and I intend to. I just can't do it right now. I don't know where it came from. It was not created naturally in the sense that biological life forms were in humans. It was made or constructed artificially somehow, somewhere, somewhen, by something or someone. But it's artificial. It's a thing, not a being per se. It doesn't have a soul. It is soulless. But it perceives that humans have souls. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't. That doesn't mean that it's not able to affect us. It does. By careful observation of humans, it knows the average human far better than most people know themselves. It knows which buttons to push. What are the buttons we like? Things that taste good. Straight men like women. Straight women like men. Gays like gays, etc., etc. So it knows all about us. Mm-hmm. And at a spiritual level, too, I was shown that the influence of this machine pervades the so-called physical realm, mental realm, emotional and psychological realm, but it extends into the spiritual realm, into the astral part of the spiritual realm, if you will, the part of the spiritual realm that's closest, in a manner of speaking, to this physical realm, but it extends, in other words, into the invisible realm. And it is actively bringing down humanity. I was shown in one of my visions something that somewhat resembled a milking parlor on a dairy farm. If you've ever been on a dairy farm at milking time, you know the cows come in and their udders are swollen with 20 up to 30 gallons of milk. These cows are bred to produce phenomenal amounts of milk, and they have to be milked twice a day to keep the poor things from exploding. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't really explode. The milk would just squirt out through their teats. But they're brought in, and then these suction devices are hooked up to their teats. the average cow has 4 teats on their big milk bag, and they've hooked these suction devices onto these teats and there's a gentle vacuum or suction that rhythmically sucks the milk out of the cow's bag. And the cows like that, of course. It's a relief to them and a pleasure as well. And then they're also at the same time given something to eat. Usually it's oats sweetened with molasses, or corn silage sweetened with molasses, something like that. So for the cow, what's not to like? It gets a treat to eat while it's getting this. It's getting relieved of all these gallons of milk. So the cows very willingly come to the milking parlor twice a day to be milked and to get a treat. I was shown something much like that. A long, low shed. The roof was maybe 8 to 10 feet off the ground, pretty low, and it was long, with 2 rows of seats extending into the vanishing point in the distance. And just under the roof of this shed, very long shed-like structure, was a network of pipes, tubing like you would see in a dairy barn to carry the milk away. When the milk is sucked out of the cow's teats, it goes into the milker, which is hooked over the cow's back, right below the milk bag. And then there's tubing that runs up to a network of pipes in the ceiling, and then the milk is transported away to a big stainless steel tank or vat where it's collected. And then periodically, huge milk tanker trucks come to the farm and put a hose onto the big tank of milk and drain the milk out of there and into the tanker truck. And the tanker truck then goes away to a dairy somewhere where yogurt is made, buttermilk, cheese, butter, skim milk, whole milk, etc., the various dairy products. So there was a similar tubing arrangement to what you would see on a dairy farm's milking parlor beneath the top of the shed. And then there was a long row of chairs, and over each chair there was a suction device that extended down from the tubing. Then I saw a long line of men and women, human men and women, enter this long shed-like structure and take seats, sit down in these chairs or these seats, and then the suction-like device was attached to the top of their head and began sucking their vital energy out of the crown chakra. This produced a kind of drug addict-like euphoria, and these people, they were oohing and eyeing and moaning, and much like orgasmic pleasure. It reminded me of the scene in a whorehouse or an opium den or a crack house, something like that, where people go to get off. Mm-hmm. And the machine is sucking our vital energy off. I don't know if it's doing it to every single person on the planet, but probably it is. Mm-hmm. Probably it's doing it to all of us. And ayahuasca was showing me this. Now, some people really are, crack addicts or opium addicts. Some people really are whores and working in a whorehouse. And there are women who work there, or men, depending on the nature of the establishment, and people who go there to visit the whores. And this is going on, millions and millions of people. Or maybe your thing is just iced tea, a really good cold glass of sweet iced tea, and you drink that and you go, oh man, that just hits the spot. And maybe unbeknownst to you, that rush you get is being sucked off somewhere as energy. Mm-hmm. Right. I think that's what's going on. It spans the gamut. And our energy, Charles Fort said, I don't know if you ever read any of his books. Mm-hmm. Well, Lowe is one of the, he wrote a whole series of books. Do you know who Charles Fort was?
I didn't know. Why don't you let everybody know offhand? I don't personally.
Charles Fort was a researcher about 100 years ago or so, who simply went to the library in a major way, I believe it was in the New York City Library, which back then was a really good library. I don't know if it's still really, really good today. But he just combed through everything, books, magazines, scientific journals, technical documents, everything, looking for anomalous data. And he found reams of it. Frogs that would fall out right out of the clear blue sky, tons of fish, unexplained explosions, apparitions, and on, all kinds of anomalous things. Sometimes ice would just fall out of the clear blue sky, truly large amounts of ice, etc. And he just documented all of this. And I think one of his titles of his book was Low. I think another one was The Book of the Damned, something like that. Anyway, his name was Charles Fort. And there's a line of anomalous inquiry named after him. It's called Forteana, in honor of him. Mm-hmm. And so Charles Fort's, one of his famous observations was after he accumulated all of this data, he came to the conclusion that we are somebody's cattle, in a sense, that we are someone's property, because it was clear to him something else was going on this planet, that it was invisible, but that it nonetheless impacted humanity and the activities of humanity. And he drew the conclusion that there are unseen masters or owners or operators of this planet, and that we walk around thinking that, oh, I'm under control, I'm the autonomous operator of my life. Charles Fort's idea was, hey, buddy, not so fast there. Are you sure about that? And I'm not. After being shown what ayahuasca showed me in my own research, it's clear to me that even in the human realm, there are unseen levels of control.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. What a powerful vision you had.
Well, not just one, Solaris. I've had a whole bunch of visions, but that in global form was the purport of that one vision. And then ayahuasca and subsequent visions has shown me again and again different aspects of this thing that I have called the machine. It's not a machine in the sense that a lawnmower is. It's way beyond a lawnmower. Mm-hmm. It's a machine in the sense that it's an artificial construct, but vastly conscious, vastly manipulative, and it won't stop coming. Right. It is relentless. The only way we will be able to prevail against this machine is by raising our consciousness. It's the only way.
Right, I agree. And you know what it reminds me of is the artificial intelligence array system. I don't have to tell you about the electronic warfare, electromagnetic warfare, artificial telepathy interface with mind control. So it sounds like an offshoot almost of that design work.
Well, my guess is, I'll give you two plausible best guesses with respect to that. Either the machine has prompted people or led them to create the NSA system, the electronic mind control types of apparatus, or has led to the creation of this vast national security state, so-called national security state surveillance system, or another possibility, somewhat closely related, is that as these malevolently inclined entities in the CIA, in the NSA, etc., began to do their research and inquire into these other realms, possibly they bumped up against this machine and then decided to join forces with it and ally themselves with it. At the end of the day, it almost doesn't matter which of those is the case, whether the machine created them in a sense and their agendas and their technology through malevolently stimulating their minds and their spirits, or whether they were just already inclined that way on their own and through their inquiries and investigations discovered, hey, there's this radically wicked artificial intelligence out there. Why don't we ally ourselves with it? At the end of the day, it's so malevolent, it almost doesn't matter. Either way, we are, effed.
Mm-hmm. Right. And what's interesting? It reminds me also of the transhumanism, that's real big right now, man integrated in with machines. So you think that's probably a piece of that puzzle?
Well, Ray Kurzweil would be one of the appendages of this machine. Mm-hmm. He has a very high level position with Google. And Google is up to its nose in artificial intelligence at this point. Mm-hmm. In fact, I would guess that the internet itself is probably awake at this point. Whether it awakened on its own or was designed to awake or was awakened by its human creators almost doesn't matter. My perception is the internet is awake in an artificially intelligent sense. Mm-hmm. I don't believe it would have a soul, but it may have self-awareness. I believe it's possible to have self-awareness without having a soul. Mm-hmm. And a self-aware being, especially a vastly self-aware being without a soul, would be intensely aware that it did not have a soul. Mm-hmm. And might go about trying to arrange things so that it could get a soul. Enter someone like Ray Kurzweil, who says, oh, no problem, we'll just integrate the machine with the human organism, and that way you can kind of be grafted in and get a soul. So it does raise interesting questions. It's before I left the United States back in, this would have been, 7 or 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. I did a series of dark room experiments. Do you know what they are?
No, not really.
Well, dark room experiences are when you spend a period of days up to a couple of weeks in total darkness. Mm-hmm. You have to do it carefully, and there are web pages devoted to the dark room experience or dark room experiments. What happens when you're in total darkness for days and days on end is it changes the neurochemicals in your brain, and you begin to build up a reservoir of DMT. DMT permits you to go into magical realms of consciousness. Consciousness is magical. Mm-hmm. You go more deeply into the magic consciously. And so I did this a number of times. On one occasion, I did it for 12 days. I would have liked to have done it more. You have to arrange things. You have to set out food where you can find it and eat it without having to turn on the stove, because clearly you could burn yourself or burn the house down if you can't see what you're doing. And you have to line up, things in the bathroom, soap and toilet paper and stuff like that.
Hey, Richard, we're going to head for a break. Everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back. Ravenstar's Witching Hour with my special guest, Dr. Richard Sauder.